Hello, everyone. My name is Ionut Codreanu, and today I want to talk to you about building game development. Before we start, a few words about myself. My name is Ionut. I have been a game developer all my life, and I have worked with game development companies like Vivendi or Bandai Namco or Ubisoft, and I'm now working at Funcom Bucharest. I started off as a game programmer, and then I moved towards management and game producer. And throughout my career, one of the things that I have been constantly passionate about was user experience and how to launch quality products, how to launch quality games. And basically, I was measuring that by seeing how happy my friends were when they were playing games that I worked on. And this is exactly why I chose the title for today's presentation to be production plus test equals love. Because for me, this is one of the ways that we can launch quality games. You might have heard this type of phrase on the production floors or on the hallways. And usually it is just putting together two different job families to get better results. So one of the ways this was used was saying that you have level designers plus level artists equals love. And this meant that when you have level designers working closely together with the level artist, you would get better results in terms of how immersive the worlds would be and how cohesive the level design and the art and everything around that level would be. You might have also heard game design plus gameplay programming equals love. And this meant that when game designers work close together with gameplay programmers, they would create better features. They would create features that are more fun for the players and more engaging. Today, I will talk about what happens when you bring in production teams and test teams close together in terms of the quality that we are shipping with our games. And we're going to talk about how we build these development teams and about how we're going to assure quality with this development. So where did we start from? In the beginning, there were just a bunch of people, game programmers or sound designers or artists that were creating a game, and they were called game developers. So me, as a game programmer, I write code, I start the game. If it works, I'm very happy. If it doesn't work, then I must fix it. But once I fix it, it's a win. It doesn't interact with many systems. It will work. Everything is just fine. So at that moment, quality was defined by how many problems the game developers could find while they were developing the game. And when everything that they found or that they could fix was fixed, they would launch a game. Again, great success. But as complexity grew, also the need for finding bugs or finding problems grew. And the developers then realized that there's an issue. If I fix my thing, then it works, but it can still mess up many other things in other areas of the game. So we need something new. We need a way to make sure that the quality of our game still stays top-notch. And this is how quality control appeared. We had all those game developers that were then being called game developers, now being called production. And we had the start of a brand new trade, which was game testing. And this trade would be a fully fledged trade. It would have procedures, processes, and tools. So everything it needs to actually make sure that the quality of the game is good when we release it. So we don't have bugs and everything runs smoothly. And this way we had production and QC working together towards launching a quality game. But as with any process of creating two entities inside a big team, we also started having issues. First of all, we had different objectives. The production team kept its main objective of implementing the game. But then the testing team had the objective of making sure that the game is good when we release it to the public, to the players. So in order to make that, it had to break the game to make sure that production fixes it and it won't break in the hands of players. So we can say that QC or quality control would validate what production is doing. And with this, also problems started to appear because it started creating a mentality of us and they inside both teams. Production on one hand started having issues, or at least thinking about issues from QC not reporting some of the bugs, or seeing a crash that doesn't have reproduction steps, and so on. But also on the QC side, people started thinking that production either doesn't fix the build when they have to, or maybe a crash, or they don't listen to what the priorities are inside QC. So it created this us and they mentality that gradually kind of took apart these two teams. But things worked. We had very well-established processes, and production was building the game, QC was testing the game, they were breaking it, production was fixing it, and with some exception throughout the history of game development, we released quality games. But complexity still grew. It's not like the industry is just static. It's one of the fastest growing industries in the world. So as complexity grew, we also started having bigger games. We have hundreds of developers and also hundreds of QA people. So with teams this big, and with games this big, we realized that we cannot just create a build, send it to QC, QC breaks it, production fixes it, and happiness. We now need to validate some of the implementations even before everything comes together so QC can test it. And this is how the need for development QA appeared. So now you have production, you have QC or core QA or functionality QA, and we have the development QA, which works closely with production to validate features even before they end up in functionality testing. With the complexity, we also started having procedural games. And with procedural games, we started having numerous ways of actually finishing a mission or finishing a game. And for every piece of content inside a game, you would have various options of completing it. So I'm going to take the example of completing a mission inside the game. Now, if this mission is composed out of 4 or 5 elements that can be combined, you can get a number of combinations, like 20 or 50 or 100 ways of finishing that mission. Now, if that mission was tested by one person, now it needs to be tested by 20 or 100 persons, because you need to test every possible outcome of the mission and every possible combination of mission steps to make sure that it won't break when the game is released in the player's hands. So it cannot practically scale because it's 100, but maybe we're going to have 1,000. So we need to find a way to test that without having 100 people testing out 100 combinations. And this is where automation came in. With automation, we can test all of these combinations without having the need of adding additional people to test them. So using that example that I previously gave, you have this mission. And now if you add automation inside your QA process, you would just have a computer launching the game, booting up, and then starting a particular mission with a particular combination of steps to test if everything goes okay. After that, you would just create a report and send it to the development teams or the QA teams, and also feed the dashboards so you know what the state of your game is. And this allows us to still have more complex games that we can test. So with automation, we can scale as we need with procedural games. Of course, before we had this in Dev.QA and Core QA, we had types of automation inside production to validate various features. But now we can say that we have it in all development teams, production, and also Dev.QA, Core QA. So today, if we look at the state of our game development process and teams, we can see that we have established processes and KPIs for production, for development QA, and for Core QA. And we also have automation for all of these traits. Everything is kind of the same for each of the teams. So I think we're ready for the complexity that is to come, because complexity is still growing. And the question that I ask myself as a game developer is, how can we keep delivering high quality games in this context? And the answer is to focus on the quality, not just from the shipped game perspective, but all throughout development. So this means making sure that we have quality features. So in the early stages of feature development and quality worlds, and then making sure that we have quality builds early on, so the QA teams can test them. And after that, making sure that we have quality final builds. So when everything comes together, the final builds are qualitative. And to make sure that we don't accumulate quality depth throughout development. And in order to do this, I think there's only one key, and this is removing boundaries between the game development teams, and removing boundaries between all the components of our teams. And this way, we can make sure that we have quality throughout development. And the first thing that I think we need to do is we need to have Dev.QA and Core QA coming together as just one game QA team. And this way, all the QA team members would be able to help where we need in terms of quality throughout development, and not just maybe functionality at the end. We wouldn't have different objectives like Core QA, making sure that we don't have bugs, but then Dev QA, making sure that the features work. It would just be about the quality of the game. Then we need to have automation working close together with game QA. And this means not only injecting a bit of automation, but having automation work for everything that is right now repetitive work, having automation put in for smoke tests or for all the performance checks that we do, so that the game QA can focus on the quality of the build, on creative work, and not just repetitive work. And then we add automation where it can make the biggest impact. This meaning, okay, we have automation for Core QA, but we might find out that throughout our production process, we have many issues that appear even before submit. So basically, we're breaking the build too often, so QA cannot even do their tests, and automation in QA isn't that effective. What I want to do is I want to have automation put in where it really counts. So this meaning automation working together with the tools team and with the engine team to insert those scripts where they matter most. So maybe we're going to have some pre-checks before we do the submits, or maybe we're going to have some tests after we do the submits. If we optimize this, then overall the quality of the builds would be better. And this is not just a matter of how many man hours it takes to actually test the game. It's also a matter of how good a build is and how often the build is in a good state. And this allows the content creators to iterate more, to test more, to prototype more. So overall, this allows us to see the game more inside the build and not just on paper, which allows us in turn to iterate more and create a better game. So it's not just about the costs, but it's also about the intrinsic quality of the game. And last, but definitely not least, bringing together the production team and the testing team to have a common goal of just launching a good qualitative game. And this means having the test department interacting close together with the prod department and having them work together towards milestones, towards objectives. So when, for example, tests need some help from production, production would change priorities. And then also when production needs help from the testing department in doing something that wouldn't be, let's say, the main top priority for QA, QA would adjust priorities. So overall, the project, the game moves faster in the direction of launching a quality game, and not just having objectives of independent or teams or of parts of the development team reached, but as a whole, the project not going that well. So what's keeping us from getting there? Why aren't we doing it already? And I looked at what might be the causes. First, I looked at the know-how of the teams and the tools and the processes. So all in all, let's say our game dev process. And I think we're in a good state. Almost everyone knows what everyone is doing. So the teams know how games are developed. They know what the other people inside the team are doing. So we are at a good level of know-how. In terms of tools, where a while ago we didn't have good tools and we were using config files, now we have tools in place for production, for automation, for QA. So everything is in a good place. And when it comes to processes, we are right now in a very good place. We have production processes, we have QA processes, we can track production. So we're in a very, very good state. So I think this isn't keeping us from getting there. The second thing that I looked at was in terms of differences in objectives and KPIs. So you have the production team just trying to reach milestones, and then you have QA team, the QA teams who are trying to validate that those milestones are okay. So you could say production team tries to reach a milestone, QA team is basically holding the production team from reaching that milestone with the good intention of actually being in a good position for that milestone. We still are there, but I see things moving in the good direction. So I see KPIs starting to merge. We're not going to have the same KPIs at any point in time. I'm pretty certain about that, but we can have KPIs that are close enough. So we're going to work together and adapt to the needs of the other side. So I would say this is partly true, but it's going in a good direction. So for me, what's keeping us from getting there is nothing really. It's just a matter of mindset and a matter of how we understand and how we're open to understanding what the other guys in the development teams are doing. And I see a lot of steps being taken in the direction of having just one team with one common goal. And I'm very, very glad to see that, because I think this is the way to move forward. And this is the way to increase our happiness as game developers by being closer to what we're passionate about, which is games. So we're going to be closer to the game that we're building, and this way we'll also contribute more with this passion that we have. And with this, I thank you, and I'm looking forward to see what questions you might have.
Hello, we are live with Ionut. Hey.
Hey. Hello, Katarina. Nice to be here.
Good to see you again. So that was a great topic, and you know, it's one that is very practical. It's really actual production stuff that you talked about there, and there were a few you know, great points that you touched on. A couple of questions for you. So I think many people are still trying to figure out automated QA. It's not, there isn't any outstanding tool that does this out of the box well. So do you have any recommendations or any best practices when talking about automated QA?
Yeah, it's a nice topic to cover. So when it comes to automation, most of the companies have been trying to do small things and mostly for QA. So just trying to reduce the QA budget, let's say. The way I see automation is in the entire development process. So I see automation starting from our pipelines to then our builds and the QA. So my advice would be, when you try to implement automation inside your game development pipelines, just look at the whole thing and not just some specific needs that you have in your QA teams. Think automation is part of the integral game development process and not just a small thingy that you add for QA to cost less. And this way you can maximize the impact that automation has on your entire development process, and this will actually improve the quality of your build and the quality of your content, because once you have automation earlier on in the game development process, you will have designers who have stable builds and they can iterate more. So it's not just about reducing the QA costs, it's also about improving the build quality, so you can improve the quality of the game overall.
Okay. And another one, when do you think is a good time? So is there, let me put it in a different way. Is it ever too early to assign, to start dev QA? When is a good time to do that?
It's also a good question. I don't think it's ever too early, but you need to scale the team accordingly to what you have in the process. If I was to choose one moment, I would say that once you have your first prototype functional, so basically you have your core mechanics in there and you prototyped the idea, you prototype your concept, now you saw that it works and you start implementing. So once you start implementing and you're past the prototyping phase, you can start adding dev QA to make sure that your build remains stable so you can iterate.
Okay. Ionut, thanks a lot for your time and for being part of the event. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Katalin, for inviting me. And yeah, have an enjoyable conference moving forward. Cheers.
Thank you. You too. Bye.